Hi, it's Todd from Todd Cutler here, and it's another fabulous edition of Todd's Tools. And we're going to talk hammers, but not in a how do you use them way, you know, that's what YouTube's for. Buy one that works for you, for the job that you want. There you go, there's my hot tip. But if you're a blacksmith, you're looking at my hammer collection here, and you're saying, oh, it's ridiculous, I've got 50 in my workshop. And blacksmiths do. If you ever go there, they have an extraordinary amount of hammers, each one really quite specialised for particular things. Mine are quite specialised particular things, or the things that I use them for in a way. But I don't need quite so many as a blacksmith. If you're a DIYer, you go, well, I've got one hammer, why does he want all of those? So I'll talk you through a little bit. So we're going to start with that. So it's a classic Est-wing claw hammer. I don't know how many ounces it is, I'm not really into that world. It's great. Everybody loves these. If you're into DIY, you want one, they're brilliant. And I had one. Plastic handled one. Well, who wants plastic handled one? No good at all. So I went and got a leather covered one because obviously, you know, leather handled Est-wing's got to be better than a plastic one. I don't use them that much really because they're house building tools. They're not workshop tools, but I do a bit of maintenance around here. Then we're going to come into Ballpeen hammers. I've got a few of these. Now, that is a Ballpeen hammer. So that's obviously a hammer bit. That's the Ballpeen bit. Now, these are actually really handy for riveting. So, riveting is when you get, pretend this is a bit of copper. You've got a bit of metal here and you want to, and you put it through a hole and you want to upset the top of the metal so that it covers over the edges of the hole. Now, you can do that, but what you're doing then is you are putting a big local hit using that hammer. And also, if you look there, the bottom edge here can start impacting the top of my pommel or whatever it is I'm wanting to do. And so you can mess up the rest of your work here, but also because you're hitting a big area, you have to hit quite hard. If you have a Ballpeen, you can actually tap really lightly because you're doing a tiny little area, so your force over that tiny area is the same as that force over a bigger area. It means that the metal gets moved. So you don't have to whack the hell out of something to rivet it. So Ballpeens are brilliant for that. You can just tap around really gently, just gently upsetting copper or brass or steel or whatever it is. So that's what I use Ballpeens a lot for. But they're also good for forging because you can drive your metal away from your hammer face quite well using that. Rough, yes, because it textures the metal horribly. But if you're going for a clean-up after that, it works quite well. So generally I use these for riveting, or obviously for hitting things, but use them a little bit for forging as well. So I've got a lot of these Ballpeens of various sizes. So these are all the same. I buy quite a lot of tools of this sort of thing at car boot sales, thrift sales, that sort of thing. Anyway, so Ballpeen hammers, different sizes, different ages, pretty standard tools. Then we've got this one which looks a little bit like a Ballpeen hammer because you've got this round on here. It's actually a Rapus hammer. Rapus or engraving. So you've got this weird shaped handle here, and the idea is that's quite loose in your hand, and it does this. And you can see these with incredibly thin shafts. I know a guy who's got one on maybe a 3.5 millimeter shaft, so the whole head just bends like that, and it's like a spring. So I use these for engraving particularly. I do a little bit of Rapus work very crudely, not particularly good, but they're also really good for engraving. And the reason is that you're looking at the engraving head where you're wanting to go. You're not looking at the back where you're hitting. And so that's why you have a relatively big head on it, so that you don't have to watch where the hammer's hitting. You're watching the head of the engraving punch, and you're doing that as you're going along, not needing to look at this. So that's why it's got the big head. It's not for whacking things. This is a tapping hammer, and it's built like it. It's really quite a gentle little thing. It's a very calm activity, engraving or Rapus work. You just got to do it slowly and take your time and gently. So Rapus hammer. Then I don't actually know what these are. Cross peen hammers, I think they are. So that is basically a flat. It's not a round like the Ballpeen was before. And then I've actually sharpened that one up. So this one started life like this. And I've sharpened that one up to be a little point. I can't remember why I first did it, but I use it for texturing areas and things like that. So you can go along just doing this sort of thing. Oh, actually, that's probably what I did it for. I make pieces of jewellery for my wife and the children and things like that sometimes. Just fairly simple silver work. I've got a kind of a style where it's quite textured, and yeah, I use that for those. More hammers. Well, that's where you want big lump hammer for heavy hitting. This one though, I absolutely hate. I don't know why I still got it. I should have thrown it away. You've got a big head here, but you've got a big chamfer on the edge as well. So the actual part that you can strike with is just this flattish bit in the middle. And what it means is if you misstrike something and instead of here, you just hit it here, it just scoots off. And I promise you this is actually true, hit myself in the testicles with this hammer before. Because I was putting in, I'll give you a demo, I was putting in some tent pegs, some steel tent pegs. And I went like that, and it was quite a big one, and I just glanced and it just did that. And it was not a good day. Fortunately, I was all right. But I don't know why they even make this. It's a horrible thing. But anyway, and I've got it. This is a lovely big Blacksmiths Hammer. So again, I bought this at a car boot sale, thrift sale. And you know it's a Blacksmiths Hammer because of the shape of the end there, the peen on the end. So this is really for forging out steel. It drives the steel away from the head. So if you imagine that my fingers there are a hot chunk of steel, if I hit down on there, obviously it thins it at that point. So that bit of the steel goes that way. So you can drive the metal away from you. You can draw it out. Lovely, lovely hammer. It is, in honesty, because I don't do that much forging, a bit heavy for me. But when I do want to hit something hard, it stays hit. You know, it's one of those type tools. Lovely. And then I'm just going to show you two more. This is just brilliant. So this looks like a rubber mallet. It's not. So that's rubber. And what happens, you hit something and it bounces back. Now the problem is, when you hit, you put an energy in, right? Got it. You hit and it's carrying that energy. If the hammer bounces back, some of that energy that you put into the hit is carried back and lost because it's moving the hammer away. So if you can have a hammer which hits and it just stays, dead. All of the energy goes in. And that's what this is, in fact. You can hear it. So it's actually hollow inside there, and it's full of iron shot, lead shot, whatever it is. But what it means is that you hit and all of that shot just sort of settles. And all of the weight, all of the energy, all of the force, bam, doesn't bounce back. So if you want a rubber hammer where when something is hit, it stays hit, quite literally, dead blow hammers. And so they're really good for moving things. You get a harder hit off them. For the same energy, same work you put in, you get a harder hit. Rubber hammers, they're useful when you don't want to mark things. So tapping wood around or steel or something like that. So we have this one here, which is kind of a weird shape. I have no idea what this was originally for. Probably some sort of blacksmith's hammer. Didn't come to me with a handle, so I just put a crude one on. But where I use it, I find it quite useful, is for making shapes. Because you can tap your steel work around on that side and then just flip the hammer and start moving in a different direction, because you need to approach the work from different ways. And this has effectively two hammerheads at 90 degrees to each other. And that allows that flexibility of moving the hammer very quickly and easily without having to take a piece out of the vise, for instance, and set it around the other way. So do I use it very often? No, not particularly. But it's just a nice hammer to use when it has its moment. And that, in a way, sums up an awful lot of what there is about these hammers, is they all have a slightly different use. And it's way beyond, is it a big hammer or a little hammer? It's a lot more than that. And you choose the right tool for the job. And most of the time, that's no good for me at all. Sometimes it's a perfect tool for the job. So, brick hammer, and this is basically for splitting bricks. Also use it for ironwork as well. It's kind of useful for really hitting things, but I don't use it very much. Mostly, by the look of it, I use it for smashing lumps of pitch out of a big block of pitch I've got at the back. Anyway, it's kind of a groovy shape. The reason I talked about it, though, was it's hiding this one. And this is an absolute classic, again, from the thrift sale, car boot sale. And it's a copper hammer. So they used to use these a lot in places where you don't want sparks. So the classic one, of course, is powder stores and explosive stores on ships, things like that, because it cannot and will not give a spark. But you use them for other things as well. But the fundamental point is, because it is copper, it's softer than steel. And that means that you can hit your steel components and not mark them, or not mark them very much. So if I want to tap something into a crossbow, for instance, the wedges into a crossbow, I can use a steel hammer and that's all right. But if I want to start tapping some of the components around, if I use a steel hammer, I'll start marking them. So this lovely copper hammer here works brilliantly for that. And the one I haven't got, oh yes I have, it's behind me. This has stayed with me since I was 20. And it is a copper and rawhide mallet. And again, it's the same thing. So you've got a copper head on the end there, which is good for not marking steel. And if you want to hit something still hard, but not as hard as a steel or a copper hammer, you got a rawhide face as well. And these are actually replaceable, I think. They screw out or something, but I never have. And there we are. So that's awesomely good. And I think that is probably all of the hammers that I can be interested in telling you about. See you again.